We want freedom by any means necessary. We want justice by any means necessary. We want equality by any means necessary. We don't feel that in 1964, living in a country that is supposedly based upon freedom and supposedly the leader of the free world, we don't think that we should have to sit around and wait for some segregationist congressmen and senators and a president from Texas.
Welcome back to our channel. Today, we're diving into a significant moment in American history, the civil rights movements. The civil rights movement in the United States was a pivotal moment in history, marked by the tireless efforts of activists who fought against racial discrimination and segregation. But what were the events that ignited this powerful movement? Let's take a look at 10 key events that sparked the civil rights movement.
The schools, K through 12. White children and black in the same classroom.
In 1954, the landmark Supreme Court case of Brown v. Board of Education declared that racial segregation in public schools was unconstitutional. This decision overturned the separate but equal doctrine established by the 1896 case of Plessy v. Ferguson, which had legalized racial segregation. The Brown v. Board of Education ruling marked a major turning point in the fight against segregation and served as a catalyst for the civil rights movement.
Thank you, Sister Rosa Parks. Everybody, thank you, Sister Rosa. You are the star. You started our freedom movement. Thank you, Sister Rosa Parks.
On December 1, 1955, Rosa Parks, a courageous African-American woman, refused to give up her seat on a bus in Montgomery, Alabama, sparking the Montgomery bus boycott. This act of civil disobedience by Rosa Parks, along with the leadership of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and other civil rights activists, led to a massive boycott of the city's bus system by African Americans.
The public officials of the city of Montgomery and the state of Alabama intend to obey the segregation laws of the city of Montgomery, and we, the Negro citizens of Montgomery, Alabama, do now and will continue to carry on our mass protest.
The boycott lasted for 381 days, and it put a spotlight on the injustice of segregation and discrimination, leading to significant changes in the public transportation system and inspiring other acts of civil disobedience across the country.
Freedom Now movement, hear me. We are requesting all citizens to move into Washington, to go by plane, by car, bus, any way that you can get there. Walk if necessary. We are pushing for jobs, housing, desegregated schools. This is an urgent request. Please join. Go to...
The Freedom Rides were a series of nonviolent protests against segregation on interstate buses in the South. In 1961, civil rights activists, both black and white, embarked on bus rides from Washington, D.C., to the Deep South, challenging segregated bus terminals along the way. The Freedom Rides faced violent opposition, including attacks by white supremacists and arrests by local authorities. However, the determination and courage of the Freedom Riders brought attention to the issue of segregation in interstate travel and put pressure on the federal government to intervene and enforce desegregation laws. The Birmingham Campaign in 1963 was a pivotal moment in the civil rights movement. Led by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, SCLC, the campaign aimed to desegregate Birmingham, Alabama, which was known for its harsh segregation practices. The campaign involved nonviolent protests, boycotts, and civil disobedience, and it garnered widespread media coverage of the violent response from authorities, including the use of police dogs and fire hoses against peaceful protesters. The Birmingham Campaign shed light on the brutality of segregation and inspired support for the civil rights movement.
Washington. The 1963 March on Washington was the culmination of activities that had gone on about 9 years before.
It just blew everybody away. We had no idea there would be 250,000 people there.
One of the most iconic events of the civil rights movement was the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom in 1963. On August 28, 1963, over 250,000 people, including civil rights activists, labor unions, and supporters from all over the country, gathered in Washington, D.C. The highlight of the march was Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s powerful speech known as the "I Have a Dream" speech, in which he called for an end to racism and segregation, and envisioned a future of equality and justice for all Americans.
I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal.
The march and Dr. King's speech captured the nation's attention and put pressure on the government to take action on civil rights legislation.
What about you, sir? Do you think the colored students will show up?
If I got anything to do with it, they won't show up. Well, I think it's a breaking point of the school integration. I just don't feel that they have a right to go to school with them.
In 1957, 9 African American students, famously known as the Little Rock Nine, attempted to integrate Central High School in Little Rock, Arkansas. Despite facing violent opposition and resistance from segregationists, the students persevered and eventually gained entry to the school with the help of federal intervention. The Little Rock Nine and the integration of Central High School was a pivotal event that highlighted the challenges and dangers faced by African American students seeking to access quality education and equal opportunities. The Selma to Montgomery March was a pivotal event that drew national attention to the issue of voting rights for African Americans. In 1965, civil rights activists, including Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., led a march from Selma to Montgomery, Alabama, to demand equal voting rights for African Americans.
600 people gathered at Brown Chapel AME Church on Sunday, March 7th, to begin the march to Montgomery. Dr. King was preaching in Atlanta.
The march was met with violent resistance from state and local authorities, but the determination of the marchers and the media coverage of the brutality faced by the activists galvanized public support for the Voting Rights Act of 1965, which was passed shortly after the march and helped to protect the voting rights of African Americans. The sit-in movement was a powerful form of protest against segregation in public facilities, particularly at lunch counters in restaurants. In 1960, African American college students, inspired by the civil rights movement, began organizing peaceful sit-ins at segregated lunch counters in Greensboro, North Carolina. The sit-ins spread to other cities, and thousands of students participated in the protests. The sit-ins led to the desegregation of many lunch counters and helped to ignite a wave of student-led activism in the fight against segregation.
I think we're all very young. I was the youngest, I was 17. I reacted to the Jim Crow South with anger. I did not believe for 1 minute that I was a second-class citizen, that I was inferior in any way to whites, greens, whatever. I couldn't live the lie. We decided to take a stand.
It was 1964. African Americans had been given the right to vote almost 100 years earlier, yet fewer than 7% had registered, and it was no wonder.
You'd be fired from your job if you even tried to go down and register to vote. If you had a loan, any kind of loan, they would cut your loan. They would publish your name in the paper. Then there was something called the registrar who would then make you take a test. And inevitably, if you're African American, you failed.
You didn't write anything in there, you didn't pass it.
Freedom Summer was a voter registration and education campaign that took place in Mississippi in 1964. Organized by civil rights groups, including the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, SNCC, and the Congress of Racial Equality, CORE, the campaign aimed to register African American voters in a state known for its voter suppression and discrimination against black voters. Freedom Summer volunteers faced violence, threats, and intimidation from white supremacists, and tragically, 3 volunteers were murdered. However, the campaign brought attention to the issue of voting rights and helped to pressure the federal government to pass the Voting Rights Act of 1965. The Black Power movement emerged as a significant force within the civil rights movement in the 1960s and 1970s. Led by influential figures such as Malcolm X and the Black Panther Party, the Black Power movement advocated for self-determination, pride in African American culture and heritage, and empowerment through economic, social, and political means.
In 1966, political activist Huey Newton founded the Black Panther Party with the help of his Oakland City College classmate Bobby Seale and his childhood friend David Hilliard.
The Black Power movement brought attention to the systemic racism and oppression faced by African Americans and pushed for radical changes in society, including calls for black nationalism and community control. While the Black Power movement had its controversies and disagreements within the civil rights movement, it played a significant role in shaping the discourse and strategies of the broader movement. In 1964, the Civil Rights Act was signed into law, which prohibited discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, or national origin. This landmark legislation was a major victory for the civil rights movement and marked a significant step towards achieving equality and justice for all Americans. The civil rights movement was a long and challenging journey, filled with significant events that paved the way for change and progress. It was a movement driven by the unwavering determination of civil rights activists and the collective efforts of millions of people fighting for equality, justice, and human rights. While progress has been made, the fight for civil rights and social justice continues today. It is a reminder that the struggle for equality is ongoing and that we must continue to work towards a more just and inclusive society. See you in our next video.